Hi guys, I'm so excited to offer you today a haunted house. I hope you're going to enjoy the pre-recorded design. Definitely I wanted to have a lot of fun with it and just come up with something fun for you on the fly and not have to do it twice. And I know a lot of people are very busy this time of year with little ones and stuff like that too, so it's hard to come to my live events. So definitely some of them I do pre-record for you, and then I will give you a pattern for the house, and you guys can definitely add as many little ghosts and ghouls as you like in here and have fun with it. So I can't wait to see your designs, guys. I hope that you're going to tag me on Facebook with it, share it in our groups, and have a lot of fun, and happy Halloween. To start this dreamy background, we're going to start off with a little bit of Prussian blue. I'm a little bit different for you guys. And we're definitely going to need some white. And usually I like to put white at the top of my sponge. So then that way when we're creating those clouds, then they're at the top of your sponge when you're doing those little swirls. So we also want a little bit of black, just a little bit for now. And definitely we're going to start off with a damp sponge. Okay, so hopefully you guys have jumped on a few of my classes already, and I love starting all my backgrounds with a sponge. It's great. You can really get a lot of cool looks with your sponge, and definitely it's quick. All right, and then once we wet it good in the water, we definitely want to take off some of that excess. Right? So the first thing I want to do is to set the brightest areas of my canvas over to the side a little bit, right? So then that way we can get our moon in there, and this will already start setting the glow of our look. And so I grabbed a little bit of that Parisian and quite a bit of white, guys, right? You want to load that brush really good. Don't put too much pressure while you're loading, so then that way the paint stays on the outside of your sponge. The harder you press, the more the paint is going to get in deeper into the sponge. Then you got to press even harder on your canvas to get it out. Right, so we're loading very, very lightly, but we're going over it many, many, many times, so then that way we can start getting a little bit of a blend in the middle of that softer look, right? So I definitely want to start over, tipping over onto the right top side of my sponge, and I'm setting that white in. I want it to be a little bit dirty, softer white, right? So it's okay to put a little tiny bit of that Parisian in. Right, so we're just starting to set that glow, and then as we're getting a little bit lower, we can definitely start getting a little bit darker. Okay, and then as we are moving around this glow area, we're going to spin our canvas around. Okay, so then that way we can get a little bit of a gradient in a circular area. Okay, so I'm just trying to go slow, make sure that I'm happy with this look as I keep spinning around. Right, just softly trying to blend it in. And then we can also add a little bit more white later. Okay, so try to be as dirty as you can, but then as light as you can, so you're getting all the different colors of this Parisian blue come in. Okay, so we're just softly introducing that glow. And then we're going to be bringing it down a little bit more too. I'm just working on one of my canvas paper pads today for this fun project. Okay, and I definitely want to come in and pounce a little bit stronger along the seam here so that I can, when I rip it off, it'll be totally painted. So this will be the whole top of the canvas here. So this is going to be the darkest up here, and we are going to add a little bit more black into that as well. So I don't want it to get too dark right now. And the Parisian's giving us a really nice color. Okay, so I'm just kind of spending a few minutes there to get that worked in. And then we're going to start adding some of that white back in. And once you soften, go over it a little bit, it softens, guys, right? So don't worry about it being too white. Keep blending it in a little bit of a circular motion. And we're going to leave a lot of this white over onto the one side more. Okay, so that's all I'm doing is trying to create that soft gradient. And as you see, as I'm working here, I'm starting to get some white here where I don't want it. So you just gotta really tip right over, guys. Right? I was a little bit too flat, and I was not getting enough dark. Okay, so you gotta tip right over. Slowly getting that gradient a little darker. Right. Tip right over in the middle on the white side if you're not light enough. Right. And then slowly pounce out in that circle of motion. Big C motion. Okay, I'm going to keep turning it around so that we can slowly get that soft, hazy effect. And so I definitely want it to be a little bit darker around that area. Now we can start loading up a little bit more of that Parisian. And keeping the light in the middle. And working your way out. And then we're going to slowly be darker by the time we get to this side. Okay. Setting some depth in there. Okay, so you definitely want to work a little bit quickly, so then that way you're kind of wet still while you're working. So hopefully it's blending. And this paper does dry a lot faster. Okay, so now I want to start playing around with some illusions of maybe some very subtle clouds, right? We don't want it to be too obvious, right? Just some lighter areas. Right, just playing around with. Right, keep grabbing some fresh paint, blending it in. Right, my piles are getting more separated, so I have to get them a little bit closer to each other again. Blend that paint in. Okay. I want it to be a little bit dark in this area here. But then we're also going to start getting it more dreamy and smoky looking, right? So I wanted that little bit of a light area there. Right? If you're not happy with your clouds, you know, you can definitely go over them again, wet that area, get it a little bit darker. right? Get that wet paint in there with the dark side, and then come over with your light side. And into the wet dark, it'll definitely start to soften easier for you. Okay, so it's definitely not too complicated. And definitely it's not really a cloud, guys. It's just some little bit lighter areas. It's dark out. You might be just seeing the faint, a little bit of some movement of, clouds in the dark. All right, so we definitely don't want it to be too light and too dark. Okay, and then we're also going to be adding, like I said, more to this smoky look. Okay, so as I'm coming down here too, I want to keep adding a little bit more light. Right, just getting that smoky look, not a cloud, just a smoky kind of look. And then when we put our house there, then this already will be kind of highlighted around the house a little bit. And start giving it maybe there's like a really foggy night. Okay, so again, I want to add a little bit more light, a little bit more light, and slowly move this color gradient. And so I put a little bit of light, soften it back out with the dark. And just getting some real smoky looks. And like I said, some of this will be covered later, but definitely it's good to have the practice here to play around, and then also getting a good coat of paint as a base so that it'll be easier to paint the rest of your design on. And so just keep going slowly, making sure that you're getting that coverage. Right? As I'm running out of paint, I definitely got to keep putting more pressure on that sponge to try to get it out. Okay, so again, like I said, a lot of this is going to be covered. And just playing around, getting some mottled looks. Okay, so definitely I want to add a little tiny bit of black. Okay, so we're going to push this around again. I want to get back up into this corner and tipping over so that I'm just introducing that blue-black into the corners and giving it a little bit of a spongy look. Right, very dry brush kind of feel. Right, there's not a lot on my sponge, guys. It's definitely just that little tiny bit that's dirtied everything. Black will take over very, very easy. Okay, so that's why I didn't want to put it in there right away. I'm feeling like my sponge is a little bit dry, and instead of dipping back into the water, if I feel like I need a little bit more movement, I will go over and touch just a little bit on the side of the black with some floating medium. Right? Maybe that'll help give us a little bit more blending and a little bit more translucent black so that it won't be so stark. Okay, so I'm just trying to give it a little bit more of a frame of darkness all the way around the edges. Okay, and just hitting the edge of the canvas. If you're doing a wrapped one, then definitely go all the way around the edges with your black and then fade over the edge. Okay, and then I'm running out of paint, so I like that because it's definitely just darkening that blue. All right, so starting to look a little bit more depth there, but I definitely don't want it to be like a square frame, right? So I definitely want to bring some of that black down a little bit deeper. Right, so you're not covering some of these cloud looks. Okay, and I ran out of Parisian, but I definitely think I need to add a little bit more into that black. Oops, stick my finger in it. Okay, so I want to pick up some more Parisian, tip just a tiny bit of black into it, just to darken things. Okay, so depending if you're right-handed or left-handed, you might be spinning your canvas in a different way, but definitely it should be the same thing with your, left-handed. Your white will definitely still be at the top for you. Okay, so that's why I wanted to add this blue black a little bit later, because definitely it's going to be taking over. So now I want to just concentrate on adding just that little bit more blue. Right, we might need to add a little bit more white just to soften it. And around your edges. As you're working out of that black area, create a little bit more of that smoky look, but still having that lighter bluey look here. Get it a little bit, just trying to soften it out. There's no definite clouds, guys. It's just modeledness, right? Just if you think about it while you're doing it, maybe it'll look like that a little bit in the background, but just a mottled, spongy, soft look. Okay. A little bit lighter there. Okay, work it out. Add some more blue. Add some more white. It's getting too dark. And like I said, the house will hide things. Okay, so you see how that's starting to soften out? So you're going to do that all the way around here. Keep adding some blue just outside that black area here, just to soften it out again a little bit. Okay, so tip over a little bit of white, tip over, soften it. Right, so it really lightens up that blue a little bit. Okay. And add a little bit more blue into this. And move that down a little bit more, that'll be fine. See, that black was just a little bit too hard, so I had to come in a little bit. Right, to add some blue in there. So as you're working it, you're adding extra layers, coverage. Right. Try to go slow enough that it's going into the canvas and you're not seeing all the weave. Okay, so now I'm back down into my smoky area here. Okay, so again, you can add just a smidgen of black, guys. It does give it a little bit more smoky gray blue. And come around in our front here, around the edges, being darker here. And then I'm lightening it up again as I move in. And so just creating a little bit of a frame look. Right, not looking too gray. Definitely add some more blue. Okay, and then I definitely want to come in a little bit lighter as I work in the middle. And soften it out. And you put more pressure as you're getting into the areas you want, right? Constantly tipping your sponge back and forth. Step back, take a look at it there a little bit further back, so then that way when you step back, you can kind of see the areas that aren't blended as well. Okay, so again, I'm flipping over on this side here, so that I can always have my light color on the top, and I can work my way in to the middle here again. And soften it out. Add a little bit of moisture as needed, guys. If you feel like your sponge was good and wet in the beginning, like I said, usually by the time we get to the bottom here, especially working on these paper pads, might be a little bit drier looking for you. Right, so I'm just being fussy on wherever I see that canvas weave not being blended properly. Okay, and then we are going to be putting a bit of a path in this area here. So I want it to be a little bit lighter. Alright, so that's giving us some neat looks there. Give it more glow here in the middle. Now this looks like this moon is coming down and glowing on everything that's under it. It's a little bit of an angle. Makes it look a little bit more interesting. Make sure you're kind of happy with your modeled look. We don't want this to be too dark, guys. We are going to be putting a lot of dark elements in here. And you can always go with your brush around the edges and deepen it a little bit more with more black if you feel like you want a little bit more pop. Alright, so I'm just going around all my edges, make sure I got good coverage. Alright. This is still like a dirty white. Right, so you might have to make sure that you got really good wet paint and moisture so that you can lightly layer and add it on and not putting too much pressure where you're going to wipe it off. Okay, wet it all, and then you can start playing around with adding more white and dark again, wet on wet. Okay. Like I said, this is a great area to kind of play around and practice and make sure that you're happy with it. And then, like I said, a lot will be covered. But hopefully you'll still have all that around those elements. Alright, a little bit of a glow. Yeah, I'm almost wiping off my paint here, like I was saying not to do. Right, so again, I'm just trying to be very light. Because it's kind of sticky. It's not quite dry yet, right? So that's why sometimes you'll get that happen. Okay, so again, I'm trying not to obsess too much. I'm trying to get a little bit darker here on the edge. A little bit black there, more black there. Okay. So the darker you make these edges, the brighter this glow will look. So you see, it's not perfect, guys. It's just really random, right? I want the dark to be over more on this side behind the glow. So then it pushes the eye to come here. Okay. You can see in the PDF some of the step outs. Right, so then when you're done, definitely I like to kind of fold my sponge in half and just stick it down the one side of my reservoir here. And then that way I still have all this area nice and clean to clean my brushes, and a little area over here too as well if I need it. All right, so let this dry really well, or take the blow dryer. Alright, so we're going to start off by dampening our brush there a little bit with some water. Blot it off with a bit on your paper towel or towel. And I want to pull in some of this region here. And we're going to lighten it up just a tiny little bit. Alright, add just a little bit of white into it. Okay, and now we're going to add just a little bit of floating medium in it, okay, because we want it to be a little bit translucent. Okay, so we got these dreamy kind of color of blue. Okay, so maybe a little bit darker. We can definitely play around with this a little bit as we're moving it into the foreground. Okay, so we can start off a little bit darker here and see how they look in the, right? So this is just our illusion of our trees back really far. Right, add a little bit more floating medium, guys. So then that way, some of them are very, very faint. Right, so this one could be a little bit closer. And, but definitely we want just the illusion of a bunch of little trees. Definitely more medium behind the house. Okay, they're just definitely the illusion. Alright, and they don't have to be very straight. Alright, see how that looks, and if you need to go over it a little bit more, then that's okay. Like I said, I'm not even copying my chalk line here. I'm just trying to add as many little trees as I can here, back here, and then back here. Okay, more off to the side. See how that's nice and translucent and almost disappears, right? And then over here on the darker area, if you feel like you need to add the smallest amount of black, just to darken it a little bit more off to the sides. And just the illusion. Get more floating medium in there is getting too dark. Okay, so these are all going to sit behind this fence here. Okay, so they're just very small. Right, there might be a couple that are a little bit darker. Like I said, I'm just adding a little tiny bit of hints of black on a couple of those edges, but still keeping some of that blue. Right, so like I said, I'm just kind of feeling it out as I am working here. Just, I definitely don't want it to be too dark, guys. And just maybe some foliage. You can definitely add like a little bit of a bush look. Right, a little bit more pouncy here in the background here. Mostly blue, lots of translucent color here, guys, and just kind of pounce in a little bit of a dark. Right, just using my fingers to smudge out the bottom here a little bit. Right, looks like a little bit of a forest back there. Right, so just illusion, guys, just having fun with it. Okay, rinse off my brush. Right, that might even erase some of it too if you are a little bit heavy. Mute it down a bit. Right. Get rid of that chalk. Okay, so once we have our background trees done, we can definitely start painting in our house. Okay, so for the house, I definitely want to use a little bit of that Parisian, but I want to darken it just a little bit too. Right, and then we're going to use white. So it's going to be a little bit more gray tone. Right, multi-load. Right, so we definitely just want to kind of come in here and add some different shapes here. Right, our triangle roof. Right, try to keep it a little bit lighter on the top, and then we can always add more shading in different colors on here as well. Okay, so once we have the basic shape there, you're going to use your chisel here to draw the roof line in. Okay. It's going to be a little bit darker. And then we can start adding a little bit more wall here. Dirty white is fine, guys. And so I'm just kind of coloring that in darker here. A little bit lighter here. Right. And then we could always put inner windows in later, guys. So just putting the base coat of the building here. Right. Just modelly kind of black, blue. Right, get a little bit of that blue in there, a little bit of that black. You can just concentrate on the blue now and go over it again more with black a bit to detail if you want to. Right. It should be a little bit straighter here from the bottom of the house, rooftop. But it doesn't have to be totally straight, guys. Right? It can have a little bit of a warp to it. Right. Blues and blacks in there. And then I can put my little line in here too. Right. We can always do these parts at the end. And so just kind of fill it in where you feel like your shape's gonna go. Right, so this one is going to be in front of this guy, so maybe, you know, play around with your tones that this one looks a little bit lighter, right? Multi-load. Sort of like a silhouette. This is going to go down here right behind the roof. A little bit of medium if you need it. Gives you a little bit more slip. Alright, trying to make this look crooked on purpose. Alright. Some weight in there. So you see, I'm not really traditionally loading my brush, just trying to having fun with it and allowing those streaks to go in. Right, and then just to give you a nice line at the edge. Go nice and slow. And I need a little bit more Parisian blue. Slip in a little bit more blue tones. The streakiness. Okay. Now I want this one to be just a little bit lighter. A little bit more white. Put the highlight there at the bottom of this one. And got a bit of a triangle happening. And so we can kind of see all the different areas here. I want to lighten this up just a little bit more in the center here. And then now we can pick up a little bit of black. Okay, just black by itself. Stick our little doorway in there. Basically the width of my flat brush without too much pressure. And so that gives us a good start to our house. And pick up some more white. Put in our roof. And this can come right over on top of the front back pure porch here. And stand it a little bit lower. Okay, so I still got a little bit of chalk here that's making it a bit messy. There, now I can see a little bit better. Bring that down just a little bit more. Should get some new white from my blade. Oops. Okay, not too dark, not too long, guys. Okay. And then, like I said, a little bit of white. And you can definitely downsize to different sizes, guys, if you want. Grab a little 6 or something if you want. This is working for me here. Okay, so I'm going to put another window over here. Right, making it a little bit brighter white now, so then when we put the glow of the yellow on there, it'll definitely pick up more. Okay, so maybe there's a big picture window here. And maybe a little one over here. And in here, actually, I'm going to grab my #1 liner brush. And I'm going to make a little circle one here. And here, I'm going to do a half circle one. And we can even put a little window in our door. Hey guys, so that's basically it to base coat and plan your window areas. And maybe we'll make a long and really skinny window here. And try to make them all look a little different. Okay, so just basically white. And we'll add the glow later. And make sure it's nice and bright, and then your yellow will be even brighter. There. A little bit more now into our path. Okay, so again, same kind of mixture, bluey black with white. Okay, so right in here, make sure it's not too wet. We want to add now a bit of a path. Right. A little bit of white in there, just that streaky look. And getting it just a little bit lighter as we get closer to you. Don't forget that blue. And then I'm bringing that path all the way up. You gotta get that white in there. And then it'll slowly disappear. You can always add some more highlights and areas to it. And we'll bring that out a little bit more. Back and forth, back and forth. Let the dark at the top slowly dirty your white as you're moving down. Okay. Take a little bit of floating medium and just get a little bit of color on your edge. Right. You want to add a little bit more shading to your house. Right, especially under here. You want to darken this back area behind your rooftop. If it's not dark enough, you can always add a little bit more depth under your roofs. Right, just a little bit of shading under there. This one's looking a little bit dark, that's okay. Right, trying to give it the illusions of a bit of a rooftop there. Very, very dirty white, just skimping it across. Again, always add a little bit more foliage. A little bit of more highlighty kind of foliage there. And then I want to add a little bit more depth now underneath this back area. Okay, so we might need a little bit of floating medium. Set this a bit straighter there, a little bit more of a yard back there. Okay. Just that little bit of a floating medium to bring it down so that it slowly disappears onto your blue. Okay, so don't forget your floating medium. Okay, so you got a nice glow going on in the ground here. Okay. Add a little bit more black to the sides here if you want. Right, if you didn't get enough darkness, then you can definitely come in with your black. Just kind of brush it in. Okay, so I'm getting spooky there. Starting to get a little bit scary looking. Alrighty, so keep working our way from the back towards the front. All right, so what we want to do now is get in our fence line. And again, mostly that's Parisian blue. Just the smallest amount of black to darken it. And some white. Alright, so again, the white doesn't have to be totally clean. Alright, I have a little tiny bit of moisture in my brush from when I cleaned the brush. Okay, so what I want to do is create a fence over here. So we're going to start off with our main posts. Right, to split it up into 3. Right, and just smudge out the bottom. And then maybe over here you're only going to see 2. A little bit too wide. I try to make them as skinny as your chisel is. Okay. Then you can put in some smaller ones. Right. And some bigger ones. Make them a little bit more random. Okay. Put that in so it's a little bit dirty. Right, and some of this might be covered as well. Okay, so it's a little bit translucent, guys. I'm using a tiny bit of medium. To make it look more watery, not so bright. Maybe we'll make that one a little taller. You make your fences all the same if you want. Like I said, I'm just trying to make them look a little bit more like the iron ones that had those little decorations in them. Right, so then we're going to put the side and side. Right, very, very quick. So then that way, and they slide. And if you do it too slow, then I think you get too crooked. Alright, so you're just sliding with your wrist to get that straight line. Okay, so we got a little bit of soft, dirty white there. In the background. Okay, a little bit of pickety fence. Okay, and then now that our windows are definitely dry, we can pop in some moon yellow. And a tiny little bit of apple red. Just a tiny bit, guys, on my plate. Okay. And I want to pick up mostly yellow, work that into my brush first. And then I'm going to come over and side load a tiny little bit of red. Okay, so hopefully you guys can tip your brush over to the side to get that streak down there. Tip it over here. Get the yellow down. Right. Very little pressure. Use a smaller brush if you need to, an 8 or 6. Alright, so again, I can just slowly bring some of that red over to make it look a little bit more orangey. Alright, soften that line out a little bit. Right, and then here I'm just going to go around the edge. And we're going to line this with black too, guys. So if you go out your lines a little bit more than you want, then definitely we're going to be able to detail this a bit more. Just to get that glow started. A little bit more red on the other side and then slowly orange. Okay. A little bit dirty yellow there. But just soft. Okay. Very light touches. Using just the corners, like I was doing with the sponge earlier, guys, right? I was just tipping it over slightly, trying to get that one corner of my brush only, and then put pressure on the other side of the brush. All right, so I got some nice glows there. We can't forget this guy here. Okay, so I'm just using the corner of my brush, color it in, soften it a little bit. Okay, just swirl it around. And erase if you have to. Right, just clean your brush and then just wipe off any color that you got over the edge. Okay, so I'll let that dry a little bit there. Oh, we have one more. All right, again, I'm just doing it the same way, just cheating it in there with two colors on my brush. And then we'll let that dry. Okay. So now here at the bottom, we want to start planting our big trees. Okay, so again, you can go up to a bigger brush if you want. Definitely, I love using a big 3/4 sometimes to get those really long, skinny branches. Okay, so I got the black in here now and the white. Okay, go tip a little bit of blue right in there in the middle. Hopefully that blue will ride up into the white a little bit more. Right, so we have black. Pick up the blue right in the middle of your brush. And only the black at the very tip. Work that in really, really good, guys. Even add a little tiny bit of medium in there will help. Alright, give you a little bit more slip. Okay, so one tree, I want it to be a little bit smaller. So again, I'm just putting my main trunk up somewhere. You up here again. Okay, so then I want another trunk maybe this way. Right, doing it with very little pressure first, just to see where you want your tree to go. Okay, then if you find that you're too fat up here, you can easily make down here a little bit fatter. All right, slowly work your way a little bit thicker and a little bit skinnier and skinnier and skinnier to the edge. All right, Your tree should be always a little bit fatter at the joint and then moving down that branch. So this one has to be a little bit wider and this one has to be a little bit wider for our main V. Picking up more white, picking up more blue. Right, so we want this to have just that little bit of a highlight. Right, and then very light touches to keep adding a few more branches. Right, so this one's very thicker here, right in the middle of the tree. And then you can get a little bit more wider at the base. Okay, so again, I want this to kind of disappear at the bottom. Just fade right out. And we're definitely going to go in and add a few more branches, guys, right? Oh, that one's definitely a bit too fat. Before it dries, I can come in here and erase it. Oops, dripping. Don't want to cover this light glow here we got. Okay, so just want to add that first tree there. And picking up more dirty bluey white with some black. Okay. And then this one, I want to be right off the side of the canvas. And this is going to be right off here. Right, just do it very light to start your tree. And then slowly make it a little bit fatter where you need it. Okay, a little bit more medium. Definitely should see a little bit more black in this one. Put these branches kind of curling up to each other. Very subtle white highlighted look. Okay, so this is going to definitely come off the edge. Okay. Alrighty. So now what I want to do is add a little bit more of a hazy look. Okay, before we get too far ahead on some of our front stuff, I'm going to go and put in some floating medium, and I want to make like a real milky wash with my big brush. They're very translucent, guys. Okay, again, make sure that it's very, very, very translucent. Okay, and then also make sure that you have a rag handy. Okay, so you want to take off maybe a little bit of it. And what I want to do is add a little bit more dreamy effect over the whole background. Right, so lighten it up, make it look a little bit more smoky. Right, so try not to hit your tree right now. You don't have to worry about that too much. Just over the house. Right, adding a little bit more of a smoky, like a windy look kind of effect over it. Right, just to kind of soften this whole look. Hopefully you're seeing that little bit of hazy look that I'm adding here. Right, just with my big brush to make it look a little bit more like there's a fog rolling in. Okay. A little bit heavier in certain areas. We could have done this last a little bit too, right? You can definitely still add more of the smoke, right? Definitely I wouldn't add too much right now, but definitely want to start to soften areas. Right back here. And then definitely come back and pick up some of that black again. And if you went over your tree with that smoke, then we want to make sure that this tree doesn't have any smoke on it, right? You want a little bit of white on it. But definitely we want this to be standing out. And the haze and the smoke is going to be all back there. Right? You see how I put those little stripy looks there? Again, we can intensify that in areas, you know, very easily come a little darker. Or a little lighter. Right, little at a time. Right, as you feel like you want to add it. Just sideways swoops. And it'll set that house a little bit further. Very, very subtle, guys. I'm doing this. Alright, so hopefully you guys can see what I'm adding on top of those trees back there. Okay. Alright, I think we need to add something here. We need to add some gray and some black. We'll create like a gray block. And dirty white. Okay. And I think we need to add a tombstone leaning up against the tree here. So it's just kind of round at the top, guys. You can give it a little bit more shape and down. Okay, and then we're going to fill that up Alright, so I just multi-load my brush just so that I can get some of those deeper tones. Right? Have that light at the top. And a little bit more straighter there. And a little bit square at the bottom. And then back and forth inside it. So you can get some lighter and darker tones. And just kind of leaning against the tree there. Alright, and then we'll add some more details to that. Alright, and then on this side we'll have a few pumpkins. But definitely I think while we're having the white and the black here in my brush, I don't want too much black, or just while we had this gray mixture here, I'm a little bit translucent. I think we need a few little ghosts flying around. So let's pop one around here. So basically you're doing like a little bit of a head and washing it out with a little bit of gray at the bottom. Okay, so I'm just trying to make them look like they're really far away. Okay. And then wash that edge out. And then when that dries, we'll put little eyes on them. And then maybe there's a ghost living over on this side here. Maybe he's poking out. Okay, so we just want that little bit of a round head look. And then he'll hide behind that tree. And then also when you start to do your pumpkins, okay, definitely with the darker colors here, like we had to do with the light in the windows, definitely we need to kind of base coat a little bit our pumpkin. So I'm just grabbing my yellow and white. Okay, and basically the shape of a pumpkin is a little bit round on both sides. Right, so we've got a bit of a pivot point here in the middle. Right, and then we're going to bring that down around like a circle. And then it's got a little bit of a bump at the bottom. Okay, so basically just add some white and yellow to this guy for now. Right, just so that we have a bit of a shape going on. And then we'll come back and add the pumpkin a little bit more orangey when this dries. Okay, so I want one pumpkin there. And then maybe we'll do a little bit different shape. Maybe a little bit taller, right? So again, most of them have a little bit of round. Shape to it there at the top. And just like our lights, it'll be a lot brighter for you. Okay. Want this one to look a little bit fatter. Okay, a little bit of bump there, a little bit of bump there. I guess that's a nice shape for a jack-o'-lantern. And adding a little bit more white, just playing with this for coverage. And introducing a little bit of the undertone of the yellow is not a bad thing to do. Okay, so there's our two pumpkins. Okay, we'll let that dry or blow dry it a little bit there for some extra coverage. Alright, so once we have that in there, then we can definitely, might need some fresh paint there, it's been out for a while. Add a little bit of that same gradient we were doing a little bit with the windows there. Okay, so we want definitely mostly yellow. Right, want to add a little bit of white to that yellow. So I move your gradient down a little bit so that we're starting to create that orange, a little softer red. And then we're going to start off with the red on the inside, on the outside. Okay, so we are making this a little bit small, so I still have my 12, but you can definitely downsize. Okay, gets that yellow in there. And in fact, to deepen that just a little bit, we can add just a little bit of Parisian blue in that red, or a little bit of burnt umber, if you want. Okay, so we're just going around all the edge of the pumpkin first. Right, add some floating medium in if you need it. Once we have that base coat down, then it's a lot easier just to add tone. Okay, and add some more yellow, make it nice and bright here. Soften that orange. Soften that yellow. Okay, keep adding yellow on top of that red so that it starts to lighten it up a bit. Okay, so we got a nice start of a pumpkin there. Nice and bright. Brightening up my windows a little bit more too. We want them nice and bright yellow. I'm just picking up a little bit of yellow on this corner of my brush. Oops, a little bit of red too. Oop. I want this to be a nice bright yellow. Fix my gradient. And if it helps to dry this again. I just want to make this really super easy for you guys. So at the top here, right, you're going to follow that line, come down. Make sure that you got enough yellow here. Don't want this too red. Right, see how I added more yellow, softening this line. Okay. That's a very gentle little line on both sides. Right, the way you push on the back side of that brush with the yellow will force that red to come right up. Right, so again, if you have to do this one in sections, you're afraid to hit it, you can definitely blow dry it a little bit at a time. Then we're going to put another one. And this one you definitely have to go a little bit more on your chisel to draw that line. And get that center part of the pumpkin look. Okay, so I'm a little bit lower now, so that when I put my stem into the pumpkin, it's going to be a little bit deeper into the top of the pumpkin. Okay, so you see I left a little bit of space there. Okay, very gentle touches. Okay. You have to go back behind it again. But make sure you're happy with each layer before you put the next layer on. Okay. All right, so now that we have our pumpkin set there, I definitely want to come in with the smaller brush here, the 12, with some more black. Okay, so definitely we're going to add some smaller branches now. A little bit of white in there too. Right, and add some smaller branches coming into the house now if you need to downsize or grab a liner brush. Pretty happy with most of my branches here, what I did with all the big brush. I want some of this to be right on top of the house too. And if it's not showing, add just a little bit more black. If you're in a lighter area, then you can definitely go a little bit darker. Oops. Put that down. It's supposed to be kind of rickety and, you know. And you can always add to them a little bit longer. All right, it's starting to look a little bit more foresty. Right, put a little bit more black. You know, fix your foreground here a little bit if you feel like you need a little bit more deeper area here. Definitely add a little bit more black coming in off the edge here if you're a little bit. And definitely we want to add a little bit of shadows. We need some more medium with that. Definitely helps to have that little bit more translucent shading. Right? So definitely put a lot of floating medium, just a little bit of black. Make like little washes. So we can add some shading around our pumpkins here a little bit. Right. Also, I need a little bit of shading under and around our tombstone. Right. A little bit of white just to make like a charcoal-y color. Right. Definitely can move your path a little bit. I want to keep a little bit of those blue tones in there too. So even if you're going to darken some of this with little bits of Prussian. Right, don't always have to use the black for shading. Right, get a little bit more Prussian at the bottom. Lots of medium. Just adding some different ground to it. Right, different direction. A little bit more black. Alright. And then beside the house here, I'm actually thinking all black and doing another little tree. Right, so we're gonna make some smaller little trees off the side of the house. Just using the chisel of my brush. And then also again, just the shadow of different foliages, right? You can get a little, maybe more illusions of trees. Oops. Oh boy, that wasn't a good one. Very lightly pick that up. And pick up some more Parisian. Yeah, a little bit more Parisian and just that little bit of white. Right, just gives it a little bit more highlighty look. Right, dirty brush. Right, more little, very light, scary looking trees around the house. Right, and then use your chisel too, maybe some grass strokes here off the side here of this guy here, and then maybe there's a few little grass strokes up around our jack-o'-lanterns here, just to soften the edge. Right, there's a little bit of illusions of foliage that is up in the foreground now. Really big grassy strokes just here off the edge. And it just kind of helps show it out a little bit more. Okay, so now we can get our number 2 liner is my favorite brush. Okay, add some water and mix some a little bit of translucent black. Right, we want it to be a little bit runny, and when we're using a liner brush, we always add water, not medium. Right, and swirl that out, and then test it somewhere. Right, make sure that you can get really, really thin lines. So you can just do a lot of different varieties of looks, right? Especially here, maybe this will look more like stonage if we just kind of dot it around the edge. Right here, you know, we can definitely do a little bit more lines. One down the middle, one down the middle, and then in the middle of those two. And then down here, we're definitely going to come a little bit heavier. So it looks like there's a little bit of a window ledge. And just trying to make them look a little bit different. You could have put another window here too. I'm almost thinking I should have. And again, just lining all around those windows. And dot, 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 dot. I can even put like a little cross, oops, in that one. And the nice thing is, guys, I know black is very hard to erase and dirty, but, you know, with your yellow dry, you could erase if you feel like you don't like it. Always try to pull towards you. If you can, pull sideways. You gotta get right up on that chisel. Turn your canvas if it's easier. So this one I want to start off with a V here. And then another V here. see here. Get I put little crosses in this one. And this one I'm going to leave like that. But if you need to fix anything, definitely go around the edges. And this one, we're going to paint a little triangle here and a hat. And then you're going to give her a nose and just a little illusion here. Try my best here to create a little witch face. I don't know. Just the illusion, guys. Right? Make that hat a little bit bigger. Maybe grab a little tiny bit of white. I have it here somewhere. Just to give it like a little bit of highlight. Maybe along the hat. That's all it needs. Right. And I'm putting just that little bit of a skimpy white along there just to kind of make it look like there's highlights here and there. You just hit the window. It's clean. With some white here and there. I got black on my brush. Just here and there, just to kind of give it some shine lines. Right. And then we're going to come back over to this right here, and I'm going to add a little bit of detail into my gravestone. I can line around the outside too, just to give it a little bit more darker dimension. And then R. I and B. I guess there's dots in there. We don't have to put those dots in there. Okay, and then we need a little bit of brown. And again, you just use your liner brush. I want to make this dark, but not too dark. A little bit of yellow, maybe a little bit of brown. And just the simple little push and pull that right into the center. This one can come this way and right into your center. So hopefully that's going to show up a little bit, just with that little bit of brown and white on your brush. Okay, and to add a little bit more shading, you can add just that little bit more shading around the outside of the stem, just to soften that look a little bit. You can add just that little bit more depth to your orange or your red. Right? A little bit easier than trying to create this color. I often like to do like glazing. Oops, my brush is too wet. Okay, a little bit of floating medium, a little bit of brown. Start on the outside, work your way in. It just adds a little bit more depth to the orange. And it makes it look a little bit darker, right? Because it is nighttime. But definitely that little bit of shading around your stem. Add a little bit of brown tones into your make it dirty a little bit. Nice marbly kind of look to it, right? Make it a little more like stone. If you don't like the witch, don't put her in there, but then add a little bit of extra. And then we need some dots. Little tiny dots here for our ghost. Right. And yeah, that's it for all the little tiny details. Okay, so there's our haunted house and all the details. And then what I wanted to do to give this painting a lot more pop was also add some leaves. Okay, so hopefully you guys have a number 8. And what I want to do is create a gradient with this orange and yellow again. Add some white into that yellow. Okay. And add some yellow into that red too, make it a little bit more orangey. And we're going to add some leaves. Okay, some 1-stroke leaves. Just some small ones. Don't put a lot of pressure. So you can always go to a smaller brush. Okay, so I'm just kind of making them in random directions. And then this is also good for if there's anything that you didn't like, then you can definitely go and put a leaf on it. Yeah, so most of the leaves are starting to fall on the ground, but there's still a few that are still on the tree. Push up to a point. Push to a point. Oops, I'm going in different directions now, right? So I'm trying to push, point, push to the point. Just tiny little one-stroke leaves. Right? You get that yellow and red constantly pushed in. So this guy here, he's definitely bigger, and his leaves are all the way up high. Right, but maybe this guy here, he's a little bit closer. All right. This guy here doesn't have enough yellow. You guys can see my plate. Okay, so I'm just coming over, side loading a little bit of white. This one I'm trying to add just a little bit more leaves on this side than that one. Fresh paint every time. Okay. And then because we have leaves up on the tree still, right, try to add little tiny leaves on the ground. But they're really just touches, guys. Right? Maybe a little bit closer to you. You gotta have a little bit more. Some might be lighter, some might be more red. Very, very little bit. Oops. Too much. Wait. And just random, guys, just kind of here and there. Farther away they are, they're going to be just like little touches. adding just a little bit more brighter grass. Right, add a little bit more medium. Just so that it looks like the light is hitting it a little tiny bit. Right. And just little touches of glow onto my tree. Right, just playing around now to see where it needs a little bit of extra. Maybe it's not showing up enough. Maybe we need just a little bit of highlight. Just a very loose kind of look for the tree. Hey guys, your haunted house. Oh, and we have to definitely add our jack-o'-lantern faces. You could keep them like this if you really like them this way. But we need to add like a little bit of a face to these guys. It's not too wet. And let's see. And then this guy will make him look a little bit more angry. Put the triangles upside down. Right. Start off with a smile. Decide where you want his teeth to look. A little bit of a triangle there, a little bit of a triangle there. Or little boxes. And then I make his smile a little bit bigger. Right. Yeah, a little bit more boxy, right? Our teeth. Alright, there's our little jack-o'-lanterns. And then I'm just going to touch just a little bit of a white line. Just to say, oops, too much. To give them some eyes. I know I'm having too much fun. Right, and then if you need to attach any more of your branches, maybe a little bit more, you could go and play with a little bit more stems. Oops. Getting excited here. My paper is curled up. You can always add a few little stems in there. Very, very light. Well, with a little bit of brown in it if you want more browny tones. A little softer black. Don't make it too black. Just helps soften the leaves a little bit. Play with it, guys. I'm gonna add more washes of goldiness, I guess. Just little glows, I guess, in the ground where there's maybe more, oops, a little too heavy there. More leaves. More like shadow leaves, kind of looking. Alright, and then all it needs is your signature. Okay. Find a little spot here in the corner here. And there's your haunted house, guys. Little ghost and witch. I'm not sure which details I want to do in that little witch, but like I said, it's just illusion, guys. There's a witch in the window. Alright, happy creating, guys. We'll see you soon at the next paint project.